Well, hello everyone. My name's Scott Kruger, and I want to thank everyone for viewing today's interview with Coach Larry Allen, former head coach at Hamilton High School. This is our first episode of Around Town Sports Edition. Coach Allen, thank you for joining us today. I just got to say, this is really important to me and special for more than one reason. Our families have been friends for so long.
Yes.
Your wife, Melanie, taught me math at high school, and she also tutored me for several years.
I'm sorry no. Now, you know what? I'm very honored that you asked, Scott. Like you said, our families have been very close, and your mother's been a great friend of my wife's, and they taught together. And
they still are to this day.
And I can tell you this, they could tell you some good stories. That's when you could have a lot of fun.
Yep.
But no, I appreciate it, and you know, we as Hamiltonians, even though I wasn't born here, I lived here most of my life, and it's a great place to be, and you do have good friends. And I think one thing about Hamilton, they're loyal friends.
That's correct.
And I think sometimes loyalty kind of goes out the door now, and that kind of bothers me a little bit. So.
Well, I want to start off today just by asking you, obviously, you probably don't need much introduction. Speaking of Hamiltonians, everyone knows who you are, very successful basketball coach here, 19 years at the high school, 11 as head coach. So I want to start by asking you, what is it about coaching that drove you to staying with it for so long?
Well, first of all, I saw how important education was. But I wasn't a good student because I had a learning disability. And back then, they didn't really test for the learning disabilities back then. And I had a hard time with comprehending what I would read and jot it down on a piece of paper. But I was good in math. And I remember my grandmother taught me all the states and capitals when I was second grade. So I did have a memory, so I kind of looked back. But the biggest thing it caused me, I met a gentleman named Marv McCullum, and I was smart enough to date the coach's daughter, and which is Melanie, we've already kind of brought up. And I would go around with Coach, and this guy from 7 Mile, and this guy from 7 Mile, I could name you some big names that had gone on and done well. Well, I can't right now. The gentleman that won the state championship in Fairfield in football. I can't think of his name, but he's still coaching, I think. But I saw what kind of, how he affected those young men, and how they felt like they owed everything to Coach McCullum because of their success. And Coach, good man, so I got that, and of course then I met Mrs. McCullum. Really, the person in the McCullum family should be really put up as the queen of everything. But she was a great person. She would correct my language and check on me.
Set you straight.
Oh yeah, but she was great. But no, Coach did everything. He was the guy that got on me hard.
And he was your coach in high school.
He was my coach in high school, and he tells me the story that he went to the 9th grade tournament. I went to Harding Junior High. My wife went to Wilson. Of course, we always would beat Wilson. I gave Kevin a hard time because I was a year behind Kevin, and Kevin, I think, had beaten us twice. And Coach, a guy named Coach Eccles, brought me up, and as an 8th grader, and I held my boy down, but it was fun.
Well, the reason I asked you the question to start off, as I was preparing for today, I read a quote that you had at the time that you were interviewing for the Middletown job, and so the interviewer asked you, because Middletown's obviously a rival of Hamilton, and it was kind of calling you out for the decision to go over there, and you looked at him and you said, "Coaching is coaching."
Well,
and I think that's really what it boils down to, right? It's just it's a passion for helping young men. And
I became
grow
a
and
head
mature.
coach at 28 at a place called Miami Trace. That's where Art Schlichter, the famous Art Schlichter.
Oh yeah, Ohio State.
Ohio State, which I do, you do. Art almost coached for me in 9th grade.
Oh, wow.
And then he turned himself in, and that was
the rest is history.
The rest is history. But no, so I wanted to make impressions on other kids to help. I didn't get into coaching to win games and all that. I got in coaching to make a difference in people's lives. Now, I didn't make a difference in everybody's life. You can't. I taught at Monroe Elementary. I taught at Jefferson Elementary, Taylor Elementary, Cleveland Elementary. I taught at 2 of the junior highs. I got to be around town. That was really good for me. I got to know a lot of different types of kids. I can't judge any other coaches or any other teachers, but I was around a group of people that believed in our kids, in our community. And our community just thrives on good family, and that's another part. You can't become a good coach unless you have some type of rapport with parents. Now, they have to know that as a coach, you're the man.
Right.
Or the woman, or whatever.
Right.
But you're going to try to do the best for the kids. But no, that's what drew me to coaching, and I'm very thankful. And the other thing that the reason why we had success was I had great people around me, had great kids, great administration, great support from teachers, and my wife. I mean, she was my biggest critic. I don't care. I'm sure you were out in the community here talk bad about Coach McCollum. Well, you were too young before that. But people talk bad about Coach. People would talk bad about John Smith. And I'm thinking, I'm not half the coach that they are. So they're going to talk bad about me too. Who cares?
Right.
Like Coach McCollum said, you can't worry or concern yourself about what other people think. And you know what? That's such a great thing to think.
Well, and speaking about Melanie, I can recall after I had graduated high school coming back, and my mom would tell me, and I think this was your 2014, which we'll get to in a minute, how Melanie would pack snacks.
Oh yeah,
for the
she
kids.
fed the kids all the time.
Kept them fed.
She taught them. She tutored them. We brought them home. We took them home at times. We had some players that stayed with us a couple times when they had some problems. Oh yeah, she was like the Adam Myers-White.
Yeah.
I think Adam Myers-White would tell you that besides his mother, that she was as inspirational for him as anyone. And he's a doctor now.
He's a doctor.
And he's
I was going to say it, but I wouldn't want you to do it first.
Next year for a 2-year program, so he can do open heart surgery and organ transplants.
Well, speaking of success, I do want to focus on your 2004 state championship team. And so this is a question I've always wanted to ask you and haven't had really the opportunity, but was there a point in time, whether it was preseason or perhaps when some of those boys were playing at the junior high, that you knew that you had something special?
Well, first of all, that's a great question because I could talk all day long on that. We would have meetings, and I said, listen, guys, these freshmen are coming up. When they're juniors or seniors, we could win the state. And that was Adam Myers-White, all those guys, Jason Miller. And I said, these guys are something special. Well, their junior year, in 2003, John Smith and Josh Couch, we went to the regional finals, got beat by Moeller. And that was the time that I learned a lot. Carl Kramer outcoached me from the time we got off the bus until we got back on the bus. And Brad Curlin brought the clipboard up, and we wrote about 8 or 9 pages of stuff that we were incompetent. And I swore to myself that would never happen again. They basically had everybody back, but we had lost John and Josh. When we got these 2 little skinny guys, a guy named Casey Brook and Billy Allen, that moved up with the 5 guys who were coming back, and
just so the listeners know, Billy Allen was your son.
Well, let me tell you, just imagine, and you have a son now. Just imagine doing the most important thing in your life that means the most, and you're able to do this with your son or daughter if you're coaching their daughter.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
I mean,
Had to have been
it was
amazing.
the ultimate dream. Kevin Grebe wanted to be an NBA player. I wanted to be just a coach at Hamilton. That was my goal. And as Darrell Hedrick told me the first time, Darrell was the head coach at Miami when I went to Miami. First time in philosophy of basketball, you don't go back to your hometown and coach. Well,
That's exactly what you did.
yeah. So, but anyway, so we had our scrimmage. We always went down to Newport Catholic. We killed them. They got mad at us because they tried to press us. We murdered them. And so as soon as I got home, I called the boys up, my coaches, and said, we need to get together. We need to turn over every rock. And this is in the summer of '03, after we had been regional runner-up. And we got together and I said, buddy, this is the year right now. I think we can do it twice, but this is the year. And I said, George, I'm gonna tell you right now, and this is probably early October. I said, George, if we don't win the state this year, just fire me.
Oh, wow.
Now
You were that confident.
Oh, yeah.
You knew.
And you know what? A lot of things had to happen. A lot of things did happen, as I was telling you some stories earlier. And I really believed in these guys. And I really thought that this group of guys were the team. I love them. They worked hard. The kids worked hard. We spent a lot of time.
Now, what year was Billy in 2004? He was an underclassman, right? That's why I thought.
Freshman year. But he had
you had a good mix. You had a good mix of seniors, you had some juniors, you had some sophomores, and some freshmen that contributed.
We had a really good mix of guys. Guys had played a lot in the summer, but we had Derek Huff, which was big-time football player. Adam Myers-White was a big-time football player. Casey played golf. You know, and I don't know if
athletes,
you
not
knew
just
Bobby,
basketball
his
players,
brother.
Right.
Bobby may have been the smartest kid. My wife.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to step on your.
No offense taken. He was. I know Bobby very well. Yeah.
He was brilliant, and Bobby was funny.
Yeah.
He taught me one thing: don't let seniors talk at your banquet. That was my first year. I learned first year. But anyway,
They've got nothing to lose.
No.
They're already done.
But his family's so great. I mean, Casey and Bobby's parents were great. Now we start 3-2.
You took it right out of my mouth. I wanted to figure out what were some of the highs and the lows.
Well, of course, when you think you're going to win the state, you got beat the first game by LaSalle, and LaSalle had a really good team. They made it to the regional semis. 2 weeks later, we beat St. X, but he couldn't beat St. X. So he said, "Can I come up and get your film?" I said, "Sure, you can come up and get it." I said, "What do you need?" He says, "For some reason, you beat him. I can't beat him." He said, "Well, Larry, here's what happened in your game. I told my two big guys to beat up your two big guys until they started calling fouls. They didn't call fouls." So, yeah, it was a really physical game. We learned from it. But we went to Christmas break. The first 2 days, we had 3 practices. Came in at about 8 o'clock, worked hard on defense, took charges, dove on the floor, took charges, dove on the floor. At noon, I would feed them. I'd feed them breakfast too. And Adam would be really mad. And so we got serious. And we won 22 in a row.
Now I got to stop you because as I'm listening to the story, I remember I was in law school at the time.
Yeah.
And I went to every playoff game. And I know you guys rattled off 19 straight. But you guys had some close ones.
Oh, yeah.
You had some close ones, including the final game. That was.
Well, none of them were. Well, there were a few easy ones. Well, Fairfield, we played first. But Fairfield, Matt Wisman, if he would coach that well against everybody else, Matt did a great job. But, Fairfield Hamilton rival was big. And then we played Mason.
Yep.
And they had a kid that was really good, Richmond.
And they weren't in our conference at that time.
No, not at that time.
Right.
And they had us down.
And we were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
It's not just about the talent and the coaching, it's everything, including luck, a little bit of luck.
And that group of guys, I had so much confidence in guys all those guys. But Adam would come up and say, "Coach, what do you think about this?" "Okay, let's do it." those guys. And whenever I talk to Adam and some of those guys, it's all about the system.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody, and that was well taught through the junior high guys and through all of it. And I took things from Coach McCollum, I took things from Darrell Hudrick, and I took a lot of stuff from John Smith. Mm-hmm. And all those guys are good, really great coaches. And I knew I wasn't as good as those guys. But hey, it helps to have good talent.
Right. I feel like you're reading my mind because you're beating me to the punch with this interview.
Carlos Davis, Chris Kingsbury, Ricky Jones,
right,
and all those guys.
Tyrese Walker.
But we had one problem. We'd kind of run our mouth every once in a while and got us in trouble. But you know what? I could name kid after kid after kid after kid how well they're doing.
And I know you can. And I know Melanie's the same way. You ask her about her teaching career, and it all boils down to the kids.
She was the teacher.
Yeah.
And she was a big reason why I had any success. Mm-hmm. Any. And,
so I do have to ask you. So we talked about the state championship team, which is obviously a lot of fun to talk about and a career highlight. Aside from that, do you have a memorable season that maybe didn't quite go as well as planned?
I think the year that we were struggling, Ryan King was hurt, and there was somebody else hurt, and we didn't have the entire team. We're like 6-9, when we just got spanked by Oak Hills at home, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to go in there and say, hey, we're going to win a district championship. You know how many of those guys probably believed me? I know Josh Andrews, I don't think believed me, but that made an impression. He's a very good coach, mm-hmm. and he understands what it means. But that first year was a special year. Building that great foundation of discipline and hard work and defense and teamwork. I mean, but it wasn't all rosy all the time. But we know that. Life is not rosy all the time. I don't care what business you're in.
That's absolutely right.
And you learn to pull your bootstraps up and get working again. Make a plan and work it.
Well, and again, I know we've already touched on this, but what I find so fascinating about this interview is how much love you have for all of the people that have helped contribute to your career. It's amazing.
But the main contributor was the guy above. I spent hours on the road scouting for Coach McCollum. I'd spend hours laying on my bed, praying, hey, give me this chance. And as my mother-in-law said, God put you there. Mm-hmm. Adversity. I never wobbled. And I could have gone a couple other places. I didn't want to go. This is my home. But it was a great place. I couldn't have landed. God put me here. I mean, just everything. Put me with a guy like Coach McCollum. Mm-hmm. Gave me a wife like my wife is, Melanie. Gave me 3 great kids. Great people. I had great principals. Tom Howe, Dennis Malone. I mean, and like I said, Jada stepped up and gave me a chance. But the one guy that really, really, really believed in me, he's a lawyer too. Nate Lampley. He believed in me.
Mm-hmm. And he's a phenomenal speaker. He spoke at our graduation a few years ago.
He's a great man.
Yep.
I owe a lot to him. I mean, he tells me, Larry, I don't know what they were doing, but to me, you were the guy that all along. But, I was kin to McCollum's, and they'd had their run, but at the same time, they gave me a chance. And I'm very grateful to Janet and the board members that did vote.
And I know that you still keep in touch with a lot of these people.
Oh yeah, Duke Baker's just had major surgery on his back. I hear he's doing well.
Yep.
But I see so many people, the Jeffersonians, the Jefferson kids. Mm-hmm. I talked to him for a half hour working out of one of the kids, and all the great things that's going on in his life. And there's just there's just so many.
Well, I got to tell you, that's, when my law partner Josh Hodges and I started this project, this is the focus, right? We wanted to find people in Hamilton who had pride in the town, who still live here and have wonderful things to say, because it is a great community.
Oh, well, well, for this type of a community, it's a great community.
And so I want to thank you for joining us today. This is our first episode. This is my first run at it.
Well, hopefully.
And I really appreciate having you
I
come in today
I'm
and spending
to,
some time with us.
With you, you're very successful, and I appreciate it. And hopefully you do it because my wife's good friends with your brother. No.
And I can tell you, and I think we're done with the show, but I got to tell you, we were talking earlier about Disney World, so you have to know, as you know, I've got 2 young kids.
If you don't take them here pretty soon, I'm going to rent them out and take them myself.
We've got to go to Disney World.
Save your buddy. I know, that's, people, it's like they did a video of me when I won the state. What are you going to do now since you won the state championship? I'm going to Disney World.
Going to Disney World.
And when I retired September 30th, back 10 years ago, on October 1st, I was